This is the first unit of Environmental Science and Engineering, Environment, Ecosystems and Biodiversity, and in this module we'll learn about biodiversity and the values of biodiversity. So first, what is meant by biodiversity? Biodiversity is the diversity among various life forms. It's a measure of the variety in flora and fauna present in various ecosystems. And the term biodiversity refers to the totality of species, populations, communities, and ecosystems, both wild and domesticated, that constitute the life of any one area or of the entire planet. Thus, the variety and variability of life on Earth is known as biodiversity. And biodiversity can refer to genetic variation, ecosystem variation, or species variation. Now we look into the levels or types of biodiversity. Biodiversity is generally classified into three types. These three levels result in the complexity of life on Earth. First is genetic diversity. Genetic diversity refers to the variation of genes present within the species. As we all know, genes are responsible for both the similarities and differences between the organisms. In short, we can say that diversity in the genetic makeup of the organism is referred as genetic diversity. For example, when we consider dog, there are different varieties of dogs: bulldog, Dalmatian, Alsatian, Labrador, and so on. Similarly, for tiger, we have different varieties: Royal Bengal tiger, Siberian tiger, white tiger, etc. For mango, we different types of mangoes: Malgova, Alfonsa, Banganapalli, and rice also we have different varieties. So these are all the result of difference in the genetic makeup of those species. So thus, this type of difference is referred as genetic diversity. Next comes the species diversity. So first we want to know what is meant by species. Species is a group or class of animals or plants which have some common characteristics which distinguish it from other groups of species. In short, species diversity refers to the variation among species in a community. Okay, or the number of species or the range of different types of species an area contains is referred as species diversity. For example, we have different plant species: apple, mango, orange, wheat, rice, and so on. Similarly, we have different animal species: cow, deer, cat, lion, tiger, and so on. And there are approximately 1.8 million different species classified on Earth. Of this, nearly 1 million species are insects, and every year approximately 13,000 species are being discovered. Next comes the ecosystem diversity or community diversity. Ecosystem diversity is the diversity of habitats and ecological processes occurring within each ecosystem type, or it is the variation in the biological communities in an ecosystem. There is a variation in the structure and functions among different ecosystems. For example, we have forest ecosystem, pond ecosystem, lake ecosystem, so on. Okay, so these are all the levels or types of biodiversity. Okay, now we'll move into the next slide. What are the values or importance of biodiversity? So before that, see, this is the banana variety. We have different types of bananas. So this is genetic diversity. See, different types of dogs. These are all Homo sapiens, but there are different categories of people. Corn, okay, and different types of frog. Okay, so this comes under genetic diversity. This is plant as well as animal species. So species diversity. These are all ecosystem diversity. Rainforest, mangrove ecosystem, estuarine ecosystem. This is coral reef. Okay, so diversity in the ecosystem. Now we look into the values or importance of biodiversity. Biodiversity has great values in terms of its commercial utility, ecological services, social and aesthetic values. And the values of biodiversity is classified into two categories, namely direct values and indirect values. Under direct values, we have consumptive value, productive value, and under indirect values, we have social value, ethical value, aesthetic value, and optional value. So, first, what is meant by direct values? These are the uses that can be directly related to biodiversity. So, first is the consumptive use value. Okay, the products due to biodiversity is consumed directly by humans as food, or we can say biodiversity is an essential requirement for the maintenance of global food supply. The main source of human food includes animals, fish, as well as plant produce. When we consider the animals, only a couple of dozen animal species have been domesticated for food production. And 100% of the protein from domesticated animals that is being consumed by people comes from 9 species. That is this cattle, pig, sheep, goat, water buffaloes, chickens, ducks, geese and turkeys. And fish is becoming a new kind of domesticated animal through the development of aquaculture techniques. And many freshwater fish can be grown in ponds. Okay, so rearing of fish, that is referred as aquaculture. And this thing, see, the shrimp farms replace mangrove forests, and they have a serious environmental impact too. And when we consider plants, only a very small proportion of the world's plants have been used for food on a large scale. About 10 to 50,000 are thought to be edible, but only about 150 are used as human food. And 90% of the world's food comes from 15 species. 3 of them, that is wheat, corn and rice, supply 2/3 of this amount. Although there are over 10,000 species of cereals, no new ones have been brought into cultivation during the past 2000 years. Okay, so these are all regarding the consumptive use value. Actually, anything and everything that we consume is a product of biodiversity. Okay, then comes the productive use value. The products of biodiversity are commercially harvested and sold in the market. Okay, so the products of biodiversity are of commercial importance, which contribute to productive use values. Okay, for example, some animal products when we consider wool is got from sheep, musk from musk deer, honey from honey bee, silk from silkworm. Okay, these are all biodiversity products which are sold in the market, and most of the industries directly depend upon biodiversity products. For example, wood is used in paper and pulp industry, plywood industry, cotton in textile industry, fruits and vegetables in food industry, okay, and so on. Apart from this, many tropical plants produce chemicals that deter the herbivores, and many people have discovered many of these plants and use them as poisons or medicines. Calabar bean, okay, this was traditionally used as poison in West Africa, and chemical studies of this plant led to the development of methyl carbamate insecticide. And chrysanthemum, that is daisy plant. These plants were used centuries ago as a lice remedy in the Middle East, and this led to the discovery of pyrethrum insecticide. Okay, and a forest vine in South America was used for the production of rotenone, a biodegradable insecticide. And the bacterium Bacillus thuringiensis, okay, Bacillus thuringiensis, it produces toxic proteins that kill certain insects, but those proteins are harmless to humans, and hence they are produced and marketed as biopesticides. And the neem tree in India has been found to be a source of the insecticide azadirachtin, as well as fungicides, spermicide, and agents potentially valuable in birth control, such as materials that prevent implantation and cause abortion. And the tree has been used in traditional agriculture, medicine, and cosmetics for centuries. Okay, and apart from this, many medicines, morphine, codeine, quinine, atropine, digitalis, etc. These are all products of biodiversity. Okay, so all commercial products of biodiversity constitute the productive use value. Then comes the cultural, social, and ethical values and optional values. These comes under indirect values. Indirect values involve the functions performed by biodiversity which are not of any direct use. Okay, so first we'll look into social values. Social values of biodiversity refer to the manner in which the bioresources are used by the society. These social values tend to vary from country to country as well as among cultures. These are the values associated with the social, religious, spiritual aspects of life. Some plants and animals are considered as holy. Some holy plants, tulasi, neem, peepal tree, and holy animals, cow, snake, peacock, holy river. All rivers are considered as holy in our country. Then coming into our ethical values. Biodiversity lies in the understanding that humans are part of nature and one among the other species. It involves ethical issues like all life must be preserved. Other animals must be allowed to live on earth, irrespective of whether a species may or may not be useful. The very existence of different species in nature gives us pleasure. Okay. Then coming into aesthetic values. The beauty of nature has aesthetic values. Most important aesthetic value of biodiversity is ecotourism. Ecotourism facilitates the enjoyment of nature. It also generates many forms of income and employment in the tourist sector. A study that was being conducted by a group of people found that being near nature relieved working stresses, while people who worked in closed environments or with the views of only human made structures experienced much more job stresses and illness. Okay, so this shows the importance of aesthetic value of nature. Okay, and according to the Confederation of Indian Industry Statistics, travel and tourism supports 5.8% of the total employment and generates 10.8% of the total exports of the country. And the tourism industry expects that by 2020 this figure would grow to 40 million, constituting 4% of the world total. And then coming into the optional value, it's quite possible that many of the values of biodiversity are still unexplored. Okay, many of the values of biodiversity are still unexplored. Optional value include the potentials of biodiversity that are presently unknown and need to be explored. These could be useful in future. It's quite possible that we may have potential cure for many diseases like cancer, AIDS in the depths of sea or in tropical rainforest. So optional value is the value of knowing that there are biological resources on this biosphere that may one day prove to be an effective option for something important in the future. So, the potential of biodiversity are presently unknown and it needs to be explored. Okay, so these are all the values of biodiversity. Apart from this, we have ecosystem service value that is being offered by biodiversity, like air purification, protection of water, soil formatting and protection, nutrient cycling, food production, climate control, and so on. Okay, so these are all the values of biodiversity. So in these slides we have learnt about biodiversity, types of biodiversity, and the values of biodiversity. Thank you.